Hey, Rudy, thanks for
Hey,
coming on,
Fran.
man. How you doing?
Also, such a pleasure. I'm blessed. Blessed
Yeah,
beyond words. Yeah.
yeah, you are, man. You have
Yeah.
such a great storied career that I want to just dive into just about everything. I'd first like to ask you this question because it's been
Mm,
on my mind.
mm,
So, if people haven't seen the movie Hired Gun, which I directed, you're in
yeah.
it, and you play a big role in that movie.
Mm.
And if I'm not mistaken, the first time you saw the film was at the world premiere in Austin, Texas, at South by Southwest. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. What was it like seeing yourself on the big screen? Now, of course, you did the interview, but when you put music to it, a score, color correction, the edit,
Mm,
everything else, and we were blessed to have a great editor. What was it
mm.
like to see some of your scenes on the big screen for the first time with a packed house?
I couldn't believe how big my head is, which is
Yeah,
which is the reason why I wear bangs
yeah,
because I've always had a big forehead with like a
right,
bump in here, kind of like a Neanderthal.
yeah,
And if you brush my hair back and look at my head on a
uh,
profile, I resemble one of those Fiji Island
yeah.
big
Tiki torch
heads.
things,
Yeah, yes,
the Easter Island sculptures.
Easter Island. Yes, yeah. That's basically That's my
Uh,
profile.
oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
with my hair, like really tied back.
Yeah.
Then after that, I settled down because first of all, you look at yourself and you go, "Oh my God, my head's so big,"
Right.
and then I started like uh, listening to what I'm actually talking about. And it's about, I'm so glad that I did the documentary with you because I think it's probably the last time or one of the last times that I ever got to talk about the plane crash. Because
Right.
from that point on, your film is out. If anybody wants to know my thoughts on that, just watch Higher Gun. It's all in there. And you guys did a really beautiful job of like behind my telling the story, you had footage and you had some
Mhm.
big pictures, and so it wasn't just me talking and having my face on the screen. You had some other uh, images to validate what I was talking about,
Right.
to give it a visual representation. And so to be honest with you, I'm pretty much done. I'm saving up for one big last something approved by the family, something
Mhm.
approved, but if it ever happens,
Oh,
that would be the last time. But for now, I'm just, you know, I just I'm pretty much as the guy who is always saying the same thing about the same subject. Because if
right.
whatever you know documentary or series, because I've been approached lately by series, and I've done a few for acts, and where they have like there's a theme to the series, and then every single episode relates to that theme you know
Right.
and I was approached by a major streaming network lately, and I declined because it's
Mm.
like it would be part of the dark series that I
Right.
and it's like no, no, because the only real darkness of me joining Ozzy, as far as my, with Randy, my memory of that is the crash. Everything else just was awesome.
Yeah.
It really was. And sometimes, you have to like say, you know what? Yes, this really tragedy happening. But also there was so much great things that happened to that. And sometimes you have to balance it.
Mm.
Yes, do not dismiss the tragedy, it's always remember the tragedy and the people that we lost, but also think about the great awesome times. We did some great beautiful things.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's funny you say the dark part. We interviewed you twice for Hired Gun. The first time we talked about your spanning career from when you were in
Mhm.
Cuba, coming to the States, and establishing all that, and kind of leapfrogging to these giant bands one after the other. But we really never talked about why you left
Mhm.
Ozzy.
Mhm.
And that's when I approached you about doing a second interview, just specifically to talk about the plane crash, if you were comfortable with it. and I wanted to do it with respect and reverence, and not just make it this headline thing for people to just come watch the movie, because you come across as a saint, and everybody says the
Right.
same thing that has watched Hired Gun. They're like, man, I wish I could be like Rudy. Well, it's probably not that hard. Just be a good person and work hard, and be honest, and those things can happen to you.
And grateful, grateful. I think
Yeah,
grateful, being grateful is a major ingredient.
yeah,
I am so grateful to so many for so much.
right, exactly. Um, Man, speaking about Randy, like, I mean, to us fans that listen to him play, our minds are blown. But you were there with him early on in the first rendition of Quiet Riot. When you stepped into that room for the first time and heard him play, his tone, his style, his melodies, what was that like?
I discovered Randy in layers,
Hmm.
meaning that when I first joined Quiet Riot, Quiet Riot was a very specific purpose, almost like laser vision. Nothing, not much on the peripheral. It's just like laser focus on getting a record deal. So it was being creative, writing, composing, and all that. But there was a direction that the band was really focused, and it was basically we were taking clues from the record companies, the local record companies, as to what kind of demo can we deliver them that that will get us signed.
Mm,
So that. And so I only saw, like, in the very, very beginning of me playing with Randy and playing that material, the Quiet Riot material, just a about 10% of Randy Rhoads.
right.
Then I joined the staff at his mom's music school, Musonia, teaching bass, and I would hear Randy playing classical guitar in between lessons, and it was like, wow. So I go outside, out of my room, and I go, wow, I didn't know you played like that. And he says, yeah, well, it's not this is not something I would play in Quiet Riot. So I never really, he would play some classical passages on his electric during his guitar solo, but little bits and pieces, and then he'll crank it up and play really fast again, shred. And then the next layer was when Randy joined Ozzy, and he asked Ozzy, what do you want me to write? And Ozzy said, be yourself,
Hmm.
which means that now Randy could take his over a decade background of playing classical music and learning composition theory, harmony. You know, Randy was the first truly music educated musician I've ever played with. His mom and dad, they owned that school, Musonia. So Randy immediately started, learning academia, just following academia, not just like we do nowadays. I just jump on YouTube and whatever I want to learn.
Hmm.
I don't follow the path. But then
Right.
again, I've been playing for a long time. If I was going to follow the path, it would be like, the very beginning of academia would be like really boring, even though I might pick up some things here and there. But it was like, okay, I've been playing for like 50 years now, over 50 years. So I'll just pick up certain things in certain genres of music, let's say jazz,
Right.
which to me is it's the ultimate language of expression and freedom in music. And I'm always going in there because I grew up with that in Cuba before rock and roll existed. I was a little kid and there was Latin jazz being played wherever I went. And it was like music that's been in my head. And it's like kind of like learning how to get under the hood and say, oh, this is how it works. You know, because I've been playing another style of music, which is more, let me put it this way, you have less choices, tonal
Right.
choices. You stick with a lot of dominant chords, blues based music.
Hmm.
And then once you start stepping into the jazz realm, you have more freedom and then more choices. And but it's then again, to certain people's ears, it doesn't sound correct. because they're not used to that type of harmony
Right.
structure within a song. So, Randy was that educated that he could like sit down. He taught me how to play initially the bass parts
Mm.
on the record. Because what happened is when I joined the band, this is 1981. The record had been just released in the US. It was not really getting major airplay yet. So every song to me was like hearing it for the first time. And this is me auditioning within a few hours. It's not
Okay.
like nowadays a 10-year-old can play you Crazy Train, just
Right.
like the
Right.
record. He'll go, which version do you want? Do you want the tribute live version or do you want the studio version? You know, I know because I do these things rock and roll fantasy camp. And those kids, they blow my mind. And but back then, yeah, that was like, this is brand new. Everything is brand new. Even the style of music, that hearing that was like, wow, I never heard anything like this before. It's heavy, but it's melodic. And but you know, after you get into the nuts and bolts of it, it starts making sense. So Randy, just for the sake of like, we don't have the time. You got we gotta be at your audition in an hour and a half, including getting there in traffic.
Oh God.
Yeah. So, he says, okay, he played me two songs that I auditioned on, Crazy Train and I Don't Know. So he says, okay, here's the parts. And I was sitting across from him, picking things up. I had to retain everything,
Mm.
but at least it just cut down to like, you know, cut to the chase and learn the part rather than to listen to it and try to figure it out. And was like, you know, and that really helped me. And then after I joined the band, that's when I got a boom box. So I didn't have any money back then before I joined the band. So after my first paycheck, I went out and bought a boom box and they gave me a cassette. And it came with some cheap headphones, the boombox, whatever. I'm just listening and figuring out, oh, okay, so this is how it was recorded. So by then I'm playing with Tommy Aldrich. He was actually playing the song his own way. He's
Mm.
playing Tommy. When you get Tommy in the band, you get Tommy. So he's got
Yeah.
his interpretation of how the song is going to go. And then because Randy was picking up on Tommy's leaning forward style of playing drums, he starts playing different than the studio version. So it was kind of like a reimagining of the recordings that we were doing live because now we got two different members than in the studio. So things were like taking a whole different shape and direction by the
Right.
time that we hit the stage. And if you put together like Blizzard, the album, the studio record, and tribute, which is the live recordings, yeah, you're gonna get two very different energies and versions. I mean, and to me, they're both beautiful because they're honest. They're very honest renditions by all the musicians involved.
Right. I have this picture here of you guys, you and Randy Rhoads.
Mhm.
How old were you guys? I mean, you look like babies.
Can I see the photo?
Can you see it on the screen?
No.
Oh
Can you
no.
flash it? Can you pick it up? And
Oh no, it's just a file. Let me just take it off, then I'll remove it. I don't know why you
okay.
can't see it. It was the one where you're wearing the it's just a side by side of you guys. You're wearing the spandex jeans and you're right next to each other playing. But it looks like you guys are like
Oh,
12.
that okay. If
Yeah.
we're playing, okay, if we're playing right by side, that's during Quiet Riot
Oh, okay.
because we never. That was not metal.
Mm-hmm.
That was more Sunset Strip.
Right.
And I got an education of metal from Sharon very early on the 1981 tour. She
Right.
gave me the do's and don'ts of heavy
Oh.
metal,
What
British
were
heavy metal.
what were the don'ts?
Don't okay if Ozzy's singing at a certain point on stage, do not go in front of him.
Mm.
Do not cross to the other side of the stage to play with Randy. Do not put my foot on the drum riser. She drew a square on the ground and you say, you see the square here? You stand here.
Oh.
Now, if you watch Geezer, that's what he does.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know,
What about Ian Hill from Judas Priest? He doesn't move. He stays
yes, Yes, they
flush with
that
his
is
cabinet and just thrashes.
classic metal.
Yep.
That's my reference at the time was playing on the Sunset Strip, and it was more of the glam rock, a little bit more theatrical,
Right.
you know. But no, she wanted to have this become a metal band because we had two guys from the Sunset Strip
Hmm.
went at each side of Ozzy,
Right.
so she needed to bring us closer to Ozzy. Then Ozzy become more like the Sunset Strip, which by the time that I left the band, and I would say by the time Zach Wild joined the band, or even a little bit earlier, Ozzy started picking up on that.
Mm.
Ozzy was less traditional heavy metal and became more glam. He was wearing sequins, during the MTV era.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I remember seeing
yeah,
him on the Ultimate Sin tour,
yeah,
and he had the
yeah,
robe with the sequins and
yeah,
pink and all these other colors,
yeah,
and
yeah.
but I didn't
But
care. It was Ozzy.
that that would not happen in the 1981 because that was not in
Right.
within within metal. You put it this way: the first band that I've ever toured with that opened for a band that I played in, Ozzy Osbourne,
Mm.
was Motorhead.
Oh wow.
You talk about metal,
Yeah.
you know,
Unrelentless. Yeah.
it's not only sonically, but it's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
They lived it. Uh, my first conversation with Lemmy, I didn't understand a single word. I knew he was saying something very articulate and important, but unfortunately, I did not understand because I was not used to that accent.
Mm-hmm.
Even Ozzy, sometimes, when he would gather with other broomies, guys from Birmingham and start talking,
Oh yeah.
oh boy, he's like,
Well,
what
it's
is he
funny, man.
saying?
Each region, yeah, it's like each region in England has its own tonality
Yeah,
of their accent, and sometimes it's hard to discern, man, for
yeah,
sure. So getting
yeah,
back to guitar players, yes, Randy Rhoads is the pinnacle,
yeah.
but man, over your career, you've played with some monsters: Steve Vai,
Hmm.
Adrian Vandenberg, Vivian
Hmm.
Campbell.
Hmm.
God, who am I missing?
Tony
Even Kurt,
McAlpine.
Tony McAlpine.
I
I mean,
I did a tour with Ingve.
yeah, I remember that. Yep.
Yeah. Um, Let me see.
Craig Goldie, right?
Craig Goldie. Even Warren the Martini did a tour with us in 1994 in Whitesnake.
Mm,
Um,
I did not know that.
Tony McAlpine.
Brad
Um,
Gillis.
Brad Gillis, yes, Brad Gillis, absolutely. Did a record with him, that Speak of the Devil record
Mhm.
with the Ozzy Black Sabbath re-recordings. Yeah, I've been blessed with players some of the greatest guitar players, and I always learn a lot
Yeah,
from
I'm
them
sure.
because
Yeah,
I'm always
and
listening. Yeah.
vocalists. My God,
Oh my
Ozzy,
God.
Dio,
Hmm.
David Coverdale,
Yeah.
Kevin Dubrow. And I don't
Yeah.
think that Kevin gets the love that he actually deserves. But man,
I
he
know.
had a
Yeah, definitely.
powerhouse voice. And then
Yeah.
drummers:
Yeah.
Tommy Aldridge,
Yeah.
Frankie Banali.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I also got to play with Jeff Tate when he went
Oh
out with his
yeah,
own,
I
with his
actually
own
saw that
version.
tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's another incredible singer. Yeah.
Have you
Oh
ever
yeah.
got to play with Rob Halford?
No, but we tour with them. So I got to watch him every single night.
What do
Um,
you think about that voice?
it's the toughest band besides ZZ Top. With ZZ Top, the tough part was the audience.
Mm. Oh yeah.
With the audience, they don't want to know. And we opened up for them in the Eliminator tour in 1983, and they were getting all the videos on MTV, and I mean I could tell that the crowd was not an MTV crowd.
Yeah.
They were like diehards from the 70s, who were still, ZZ Top. That's their jam. And so about 10 years later, 1994, 1990, uh, here Whitesnake is opening up for ZZ Top in Dortmund.
Mm.
Big, big, big arena, like a velodrome arena.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, this time is going to be different because, it's Whitesnake and, they're pretty popular in Germany. Oh, no. It was exactly the same.
Really?
Audience wanted nothing. They didn't care. They just want to see ZZ Top.
Oh my God.
Okay, with Judas Priest is like you're playing in front of the band that you want to be like.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So you have an opportunity to learn a lot from them, but also you're gonna be spanked
Yeah.
every show.
Do you remember what tour that was, by the way? The
Oh
Priest?
yeah, it was with Priest in 1983.
So that would have probably been either
19 in
Screaming
England.
or
Yes,
Defenders of the Faith.
I think it was Screaming for Vengeance. Yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
1983.
That's when
Yeah,
they were really peaking too. Wow.
it is an well-oiled machine. These
Yeah.
guys are just like every night, spot on,
Oh,
and it's almost inhuman because
yeah.
it's you know
It's almost not fair, right?
well, I mean, when we're saying human, it's more like machines. They're
Hmm.
precision. It's
Right.
machine-like. You know, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. I want to say the first time I saw Quiet Riot was opening for Iron Maiden,
What town?
Atlanta at the Omni.
Oh yeah, the Omni. That was the last show that we did of that tour,
Yeah.
and you might recall that there was a lot of hazing
Yes.
going on during the show.
Yep.
They in our last song, they came out and hit us with either shaving cream or whipped cream while
Yeah.
we were doing the last song of the set. Then we came out wearing G strings and our Quiet
I
Riot
vaguely
mask.
remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and we started chasing. We waited for Eddie, the
Mm,
big, you know,
the monster.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and it was actually a friend of ours who was part of their crew, and he's wearing stilts
Hmm.
and he's dressed like that. So back in the day, I don't know if they still do, but back in 1983, the guitar players were still using cables, and
Oh, yeah.
their guitar techs will be on the side of the stage fishing, pulling the cable to make sure that we're not,
Tangling up. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so we waited for Eddie to come out, and we started running around Eddie, and there was like all this mayhem going on. He got tangled with the cables, and he just like boom, fell on
Oof.
the ground, face down, and they just dragged him away.
Right.
And
Right.
then at the end, we did a jam. Both bands, we did a tush together.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I got photos to prove that. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it. I have my ticket stub back here somewhere. Then I saw you again at the same venue, the Omni, and I want to say it was Christmas Eve with Wasp.
Oh yeah, Christmas. Yeah, just
Yeah,
around that time, Christmas Eve.
yeah,
With Wasp. Yeah,
yeah.
that's when they were throwing
The meat.
chickens. Yeah,
Yeah,
chicken, raw chickens.
yeah. Everybody
You know,
went home with Ebola. Yeah,
yeah, you could cook it after.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
you can eat it for Christmas. You can.
Yeah. Um, let's see. I want to get into this Black Sabbath thing that's happening
Mm,
on July 5th.
mm.
What a tremendous honor that must be for you. But
It
is it
is.
is it I don't want to say bittersweet, but you're going back to the land where you
Mm.
left Ozzy because you couldn't stand the tragedy that happened to your best friend, Randy Rhoads. What do you think those emotions are going to be like when you step on that stage?
Well, after I left 40 years ago, over
Hmm.
40 years ago, I'm a different human 40 years later. I've learned about the responsibility. And it takes time. It's not something that somebody can sit you down and say, listen, this is the way it is. Something that is a self-realization from living and experiencing things in life and learning from them that we who are left behind in whatever it might be, family members, or it might be bandmates, it could be anybody that you have a relationship with at, at work, any vocation, could be anything, a teammate. It is our responsibility of who are left behind to celebrate the legacy of those who have left us. Because if we don't, the ones who really knew these people and were part of this collaboration and creation that exists, that there's a public that is aware about them, aware of what we created. Uh, if we don't, if the real deal original people who did it are not doing it, then it's a tribute, a facsimile. It's not the people that were there. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, I love to pay tribute to the members, but it's like I was there. This is not, it's a tribute to them, and it's a celebration of the legacy that we created together. But this is the real deal. This
Right.
is as close as what's missing, whatever. Yes, it's never going to be insane because they're missing, but at least you have certain components that are going to do it the real way, the way
Right.
it was done. So when I go on stage with Quiet Riot nowadays, I've been back for since 2021. Uh, I I go back to 1978, which
Mm.
is when I joined the band originally, because from being there, I'm completely aware as somebody who was there, not somebody who is giving you an opinion. It's somebody who's giving you an experience, explaining an experience. My experience was that Randy was the unspoken leader of the band. He had a certain musical integrity that made the band. I put it this way: it was basically Kevin's first band, and it was Kelly Garney's first band, and Drew Forsythe. Before they put the band together, already Randy was a bona fide musician.
Mm.
He might not have been in a rock band, but he was a musician. He had all this musical education, so they always listened to Randy. If Randy would say, okay, we can make the song better. We can change these chords and arrange it and stuff like that. The other guys, it was just like, guys who had just joined a band for the first time, no experience whatsoever. So
Right.
you're not going to argue with Randy, who is educated in the field that you're in, music, about certain things. Like I said, composition and harmony, structure, arrangements of the songs. So he always led like that. Once he left the band, uh, Quiet Riot ceased to exist. He became Dubrow, and I joined Dubrow about 8 months before I joined Ozzy, and I moved in with Kevin, and I started playing in Dubrow. And most of the songs, over half of the songs on Mental Health are from the Dubrow period that Kevin wrote.
Hmm.
And there was a certain integrity that Kevin picked up because he always believed that at some point he could, if he became the songwriter that at Randy's level, he could lure Randy back into Quiet Riot. That's what drove him
Right.
to keep going. I'm going to get Randy to play with me again. Because of course, after you play with Randy, and then you start, the band breaks up, you start looking for guitar players or other musicians, and you go, wow, that's when you really realize what you lost,
Yeah.
and you spend the rest of your life looking for it.
I mean, on that
I
level, when you think about it, there was Randy and maybe Eddie Van Halen, and then the
and
rest were
George
just
Lynch,
in
and
George
George
Lynch.
Lynch,
Yeah, George
George
Lynch
Lynch,
is a
yeah,
shredder. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Those were the big three
Yeah.
in LA at that time, and of course Eddie had just gotten signed, and Randy got picked up by Ozzy. And at some point, you should have Dana Strum on
Mm.
the on your
I'd
show
love to have him. Yeah.
because he's got some great stories. I mean, he was so instrumental on Randy joining Ozzy.
Oh,
It
really?
was him.
Oh,
He's the one
okay.
who. Yeah, I'm not gonna go any further because
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Dana should tell the story. But he believed in him. I believed in him. I mean, Will did in Quiet Riot, and it was kind of like by the time that I found out that he was auditioning for Ozzy, we had hit a wall. There was, with the music industry locally in Los Angeles, nobody was interested in the type of music that we were composing
Mhm.
or what we represented image wise, because they were more into punk and new wave, and I was still in my early 20s. We were considered dinosaurs, and the only guys had just turned 20.
Right, right.
you know, so they were dinosaurs. So it's like, but you gotta be who you are. And was that's all we got. We
Yeah.
got we got one of us. You're you, I am me, and that's it. Everybody else is taken.
Right, right. As far as bass playing goes, with you being an Aussie and whatnot, how instrumental was like Geezer Butler's playing to you?
Well, with Ozzy initially, Geezer, I did not really start getting into Geezer until we started because we would do 3 songs from Ozzy's Black Sabbath catalog,
Mm,
and so it was mostly Bob Daisley era material
sure.
that I was playing, and Bob always reminded me of a very kind of like a if you take Geezer and Paul McCartney and you put them together, it was
Oh,
metal but very melodic,
mm,
influence. And it was very enjoyable. But Geezer is a whole completely different animal. Uh, you listen to the very early records, it's very jazz influence,
hmm.
but metal jazz. There's a lot of blues, jazz in there, especially all the riffs and all that, and the attitude. And that was very, very different. I mean, the closest thing I would say would be John Paul Jones, who is a monster,
Mm. Oh,
really
yeah.
is a monster. But John Paul Jones is more like blues, R&B. Geezer is a whole different thing,
Right.
because basically because of the tritones. There were so many tritones in all the Black Sabbath songs. As a matter of fact, the song Black Sabbath, it's just one tritone. Down, down,
Oh,
down.
yeah.
It's like there's no Led Zeppelin song like that, you
No.
know. Yeah, but then you have this song that's over and over again, and you like, if you happen to be alone in a dark room, that's the scariest shit you could ever
Oh, I'm sure.
listen.
And you're going to be playing, on the same stage as him here soon. So how are you
Yeah.
preparing for this monumental moment? Both,
Oh, you can't really prepare. I mean, I try my best, but it's
yeah,
like, you know what? I'm just gonna go with the flow of the moment and
right,
soak it in. Uh, I am somewhat preparing myself because I don't want to fall apart completely during the whatever we're doing.
right.
But then again, I might not. But I choose to just go with it.
Do you have any idea who you're going to be pairing up with to play?
No,
You
no,
know,
no.
too early.
Well, not only that, but Tom Morello, he's our music director.
Mm,
He's in charge of putting together pairing who's going to play with who and what. There's so many moving parts to
yeah,
what he's handling. I'm not gonna be that guy. Hey Tom, what's going on? Oh, listen, yeah, tell me who will play.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Kind of like the hired gun all star jam at East West.
Oh boy,
There
yeah.
were people that didn't want to play with certain people, and I'm like, oh my gosh. The funniest thing that came out of that to me was this. Do you remember meeting Corky Hale, the older lady, the piano jazz pianist?
Oh yeah,
And then Derek St. Holmes was there, and we were in the green
yeah.
room, and she was asking everybody who they played with. Oh, I played with Ozzy and Whitesnake, and everybody's going around the room, and it came back to Derek St. Holmes, and he
Hmm.
goes, I was the voice for Ted Nugent. Get out of my sight. How dare you be in the same room as me? 'Cause she's this hardcore, crazy liberal. She didn't know that he was just guilty by association because Derek St. Holmes is just a great dude. I don't have any problem with
Yeah.
Ted Nugent either. But it was so funny. The next day she called me. She's like, "Can I get Derek's phone number so I can send him an apology?" I feel so bad. I was like, okay. But look, she's in her 80s. You know who her husband is? Mike Stoller from Lieber and Stoller, the songwriter.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
Yeah.
I go to her house.
Wow.
We're friends, so she'll invite me over, especially when I was still living in California. You want to come have lunch with us? Just a sweet couple. So I'd go there, and man, the stories he also wrote "Stand by Me."
Yeah.
Oh my God, man!
The
Just
Brill. Can you
ugh.
imagine the Brill building, walking from like office to office where they were writing songs and just going like, that sounds like a hit.
Oh, I got
Who's
chills,
that?
man. I got
Oh
chills
my
just thinking
God.
about it.
My
It's
God.
funny. He was on a ship on vacation in Europe
Mm.
when Big Mama Thornton had Hound Dog. That's who they wrote it for, right? And he was coming back. The ship was sinking. It was the second largest ship disaster next to the Titanic to date. And he made it to the dock, and his writing partner, uh, Lieber, ran up to him, gave him a big hug. He goes, "Man, I'm glad you're alive. Welcome home. Can you believe we have a #1 hit song on the radio? Hound Dog." And he goes, "Big Mama Thornton." He goes, "No, this young punk named Elvis redid it and made us rich. So it's just story, talking to you, hearing these stories, it's the same thing, man. I get chills just thinking about
Wow.
it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Uh,
Love that.
yeah. What kind of a personal story, without going, somewhere you're not comfortable with, can you share with Randy? You said on stage it was wonderful, but you also shared so many other wonderful memories. Whether there's anything that sticks out, a vacation, a meal you guys shared together that was very memorable.
Yeah, we never took vacations together.
Mhm.
Uh, I consider those things to be very personal moments in
Right.
people's life, uh, especially when you are spending. Okay, I joined the band in April. So from April to September, we were all together in a tour bus,
Mm.
all, including Sharon, all of us, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then we took a 1 month off and continue on to England to start the Diary of a Madman tour in October of 1981 because the record was released earlier in England and Europe than it was in the United States. So we had 1 month off. Whatever Randy did during that month, I have no idea. I know I went to see my mom and dad. I got to meet my wife to be, Rebecca.
Mhm.
We've been together since 1981, got married in 1984. And so I recall, as far as I go, what I accomplished in that month off that I really, it's not that I needed it or welcomed it because I was so brand new to the industry. I was not burned out. So for me, let's say April to September, that was a breeze. It was
Mm.
my first tour ever. It was that great. I'm 30 years old,
Yeah, let's do it again. Yeah.
Yeah, can't wait to get back on out there. Even though I have met Rebecca, but we used to take a lot of breaks. So I knew that I was going to be doing maybe a month and a half. Yeah, and I was going to be back in December, and I was going to see her again. And then we were going to be in the States, and she could, come and join me, and because we were then, she would be like the only girl that I would see when I was back in town after we met. And so with Randy, he was doing his own things because he had his girlfriend Jody
Hmm.
and his mom, and he was still living at home with his mom. As a matter of fact, even today, his bedroom, is intact
Never
from the
changed.
last time that he was in there. Uh, his sister Kathy has kept it like that, and his car got restored. It's
Mm.
Scirocco, fully restored by her. And so his memory is very much alive with all of us.
I
And
think
but
that
but
I think it
mm,
always will be because he's such an
mm,
influential guitarist, like Van
mm,
Halen. You know,
Hmm.
anybody I ask on some of these podcasts or just round table stuff or so, who's your favorite three guitar players? Randy Rhoads,
Hmm.
you know, Eddie Van Halen, then a scurry of other guys,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah. And another thing that is going to keep him uh, in even new generations radar meaning like who's that guy, or
Exactly.
who's that musician, because when you hear somebody play you can tell what they are, male, female, whatever. It's the music, right, that attracts you. Then you
Right.
find out who the individual is, that the musician is. And uh, what's going to happen 100 years from now, music creation content is going to be very different.
Mm.
uh, I would say somebody like Randy or Eddie, any of the greats, will be hard to believe that these people existed.
Right.
They become dragons.
Hmm.
It's like fairy tale. I
Yeah.
mean, these guys actually got in a room or went on stage and played this like that. No, it's impossible.
Right.
They can't wrap their heads around it.
No.
I know kids. When I say kids, I mean, okay, I know young people from the generation that when they were born, they iPhones and iPads existed. And it's very hard for them to wrap their heads around to the fact that that basically what you have seen already as far as on YouTube footage of Randy playing, that's all there is,
Yeah.
or photos. Because we didn't have iPhones back then.
Right. Right.
And it's like, but how could this happen? How come there was no video made or no show? And I said, yes, it was. What you see as the one that is Brad Gillis performing at Irvine, whoa, that was scheduled months before,
Right.
actually months before Randy passed away.
Oh,
But he passed away. He was supposed to do that show.
right.
But you know how it is. You were in the film world, back
Hmm.
in 1982 when that was filmed. It took months to get the
Hmm.
crew together, the date, and you line everything up for the shoot. First, we did uh, a a rehearsal because we had lasers and they wanted to test the lasers. And we did it at the Oakland Arena
Yep.
in California. Okay. And then the following day, they brought the lasers and we did it outside at the Irvine amphitheater outside, which means that um, I don't know if you ever worked with lasers, but what makes laser uh, appear it's
The
smoke,
haze. Yeah.
the haze,
Yep.
right? Once you play in an amphitheater near the coast, the weather, there's no haze. Even if you
Exactly.
pump in that fog in the ice machine, it just
Yeah.
goes away.
Oh my
So they
God.
had to like superimpose later on the lasers to that part, which is really the intro of the concert. You
Ugh,
know, yeah.
crazy. As far as bass players go, who are your probably top three that you're
Oh
just
my
like
God, I don't have
a
top
Mount
three.
Rushmore of bass
It's
players?
impossible. There's so
Is it?
many. Yeah. To me, it's like one of those Chinese, where they uncover the Chinese clay soldiers. It's like a
Yes.
whole bunch of them in a row.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it's just like
Oh my
that.
God. I mean,
No
look,
Mount Rushmore for me. No.
I didn't know about a lot of these musicians before I met Ray Parker Jr., who had a
Mm.
documentary on, but he got to play with James Jamerson,
Yeah.
in
Oh
in
yeah.
Motown, and we got to do a private tour of the studio and actually get on the floor and kind of look around
Mm.
and stuff. He was give me all these recalls. Oh, I sat over there with a guitar. I was playing with doing a session with Marvin Gaye. I was like, oh my God, who's playing bass? That was the Funk Brothers, but they brought me in for that little swagger. And then, Freddie Washington is a dear friend of his. I mean, he plays in Steely Dan. if that gives you an indication of how good he
Oh
is.
yeah, oh
Right.
yeah. I met
Yeah.
him. Well, you and I, you and I were there at Ray's house.
Oh
And
yeah. Freddie was
Freddie
there.
was
Yep.
hanging. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Super cool guy.
yeah.
I mean, this guy's played with everybody as well.
I know,
So yeah.
I know.
How about this? If you could put together a dream band and you're the bass player, who would be the two guitarists, a drummer, and one vocalist?
One
Living or
guitar. I would have to
two
do the
guitars?
whole Oz,
Yeah.
the Ozzy band already. I
Yeah.
already played in my dream band.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'd rather have one guitar because
Mm,
I grew up playing with just one guitar.
that's true.
Yeah, I
That's
mean, my first two guitar band actually, yeah, my first was Whitesnake.
true. Mm. What
Yeah,
was it? Who were the two first guitar players in Whitesnake you played with?
when I was in the band, it was
Yeah.
Vivian Campbell and Adrian Vandenberg.
Oh my
And
God.
then the following tour was Steve Vai and Adrian Vandenberg.
Yeah.
And then the next tour was Warren the Martini and Adrian Vandenberg. Yeah,
The talent you've surrounded yourself with, man.
yeah, yeah.
Is there, when I interviewed Jason Newsted for Hired Gun, I was like, is there any gigs that you were offered that you turned down that were pretty big? He goes, oh yeah. He goes, I got called. I think when John Entwistle passed, the Who
Mm.
contacted him. He actually played on an album with Tina Turner.
Oh,
Yeah, and I think Aerosmith. I think Hamilton was in
mm.
rehab or fell ill or something, and they called him, but he turned him down. He goes, "I'm not worthy. I know who I am, and I cannot fill those shoes." Yeah. And
Yep.
speaking of filling shoes, man, what was your thoughts of listening to Brad Gillis the first few shows that you did with him, stepping into Randy's spot?
Yeah, it was. I spent some time with Brad even
Mm,
before he hit the stage because I knew how important it was for the role of the of that guitar player after Randy to help us to finish the tour with as much dignity to Randy's memory coming
mm,
from the guitar players and the
right.
things as possible. So I spent a lot of time with him, not just basically creating a comfort zone for him because he needed
Right.
that. Because there was a lot of animosity from Ozzy, not because of Brad or his playing, but just because the remorse of experiencing Randy's death
Right.
and the fact that we were continuing on and Randy wasn't there, you know.
Yeah. That had to be tough.
So it had to be tough. Oh, it was tough. It
Yeah.
was. When, I have to give Brad so much credit for shining so much during that, and especially during the making of Speak of the Devil, because
Hmm.
then by then, since it was not an Ozzy re-recordings, it was Black Sabbath. The gigantic shadow of Randy was not cast on him anymore. He was
Right.
free. He was free from that, and I think that he felt a little bit more relaxed
Mm,
and open to interpretations rather than really sticking to what was on the record.
sure.
You know, to the point that he gets a lot of kudos, so much kudos for his playing on that record. Because I think he was he gave himself
Mm,
freedom
right.
to express himself.
I
To
got to tell you,
show,
man. Yeah.
yeah, to show the. I think that was closer to the real Brad Gillis than when he would play the Randy music,
Sure.
songs. Yeah,
Yeah. It was a pinch me moment when I had the two of you at East West Studios playing together, man. That was just a sight to behold, and, flashbacks of that era, you know. And he's
yeah.
still a monster player. You're
Oh,
still
is
at
it?
the
Yeah,
top of your
yeah,
game. Like when I saw you at the
yeah.
Whiskey, what was it, last year, I guess? I mean, it was like flashing back to 1983 watching you play. I mean, you still got the stage presence, the stamina, the chops, everything else.
Yeah. and it's just a matter of taking to the next level every time I
Mhm.
hit the stage. What else can I do
Mm.
to keep it fresh?
Yeah.
Because what doesn't grow dies,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
I there's so much more that I feel that I need to accomplish.
Sure. Sure. Um, During your days with Randy playing live, obviously you didn't have in-ear monitors. You had, floor monitors, wedges, or whatnot.
Side
Did you
fill, side
side
fill.
fills? Yeah. Did you have his mix in your mix?
Oh God, yeah,
So what
yeah,
was that, man? When you heard that howling guitar and that talent,
yeah.
were you just sitting back sometimes, or were you just so focused on your playing? But you ever just sit there and be like, my God, this guy, what planet did he come from?
I knew that every night was the Super Bowl for us.
Wow.
But when you're part of the team, I was enjoying the ride. That was it. I did not know how long it was going to last. I didn't even think about how long it was going to last. Uh, because every day you start, you have to prove yourself again.
Right.
Uh, that became my normal.
Hmm.
What's normal to me, going on stage with Ozzy, Randy, and Tommy, and then Don Airy when you join the band. That's normal. That's my normal, you know. And the only way I can compare it is like, you know, and I'm not comparing bands, but it's back in the day, it was normal for Jimmy Page to go on stage with Robert Plant and
Right.
John Bonham and Jumbo Jones or The Who. You can name any favorite band. That was the normal for
Right.
those guys, and that was my normal. Unfortunately, it was very short lived, but at least I have those memories.
Right. Right. Can you share a couple memories about Dio? Because man,
Oh
to
dear.
me, it's Rob Halford,
Mhm.
Ronnie James Dio. Man, what a voice! What a
Yeah,
presence!
yeah. Again, there's there's two kind of musicians I've played with. The ones who are like street guys, like me.
Mhm.
I got some education. This is what happened. I started taking composition and harmony theory, all that in college, but I was already playing at night in clubs every night. And again, the very beginning, it starts off so slow. So like, oh my God, please. I know this already. I'm already playing this, and you cannot just jump to the head of the class,
Right.
you know. So you gotta go with it. And it's like I was like, oh, this is like watching paint dry, every day, you know. And it was like, okay, this has not really helped me out. I'm going to now. I'm going to take something broader, like mass communication. That's what became my major in college. As a matter of fact, in 2020, I joined the Hall of Fame of my college.
That's
As a
right. I
matter of fact,
remember.
you did the video for me. Yeah,
I was going to
yeah,
say, I remember that. That
yeah,
was a big moment,
yeah,
man. So
yeah. Yes.
congratulations on
Well,
that. Yeah.
thank you, and thank you for making such a great video.
Yeah. You're welcome.
At Ray Parker's house.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
it was cool all around.
Yeah.
And so the what was that? Oh, I'm sorry, I just flashed back to the moment of what we were talking. What was your question again?
Oh, how was it like playing with him? Like, what was that experience? The voice, his attitude.
Oh, with Dio.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, going to academia, Ronnie, when he was young, even before he started, playing, getting paid for it.
Hmm.
Because if to me, if you're playing in clubs, you know, you know, if you're in a top 40 band playing clubs, okay, you're a club musician. You're not
Right.
a recording, touring artist. That to me is a professional musician.
Right.
That is kind of like you're doing this while you're waiting to become one. Okay.
Hmm.
It's like pre-med before
Right.
you cut somebody up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And so Ronnie, I started studying like at 5 years old, classically trained trumpet player.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's how he developed his diaphragm, his breathing technique
Oh,
for singing. You know, And then he started singing in the band, playing bass, and then he became the lead singer. So he had an musical evolution. I could go to Ronnie's house when I joined Dio in 2005, and we started working on Pro Tools. I showed him some things that I knew in Pro Tools, and he just took it over and just ran with it.
Wow.
And and I would go to his house, which is like 10, 15 minutes from where I live, and he would say, "Come, check this out." I would go to his studio, and he would play me a track that he wrote, he sang, he played, and except for the drums, Simon Wright was living with him.
Hmm.
Simon would like program the drums. Everything was running, and it was like magnificent. It was like
Wow.
hearing that great song for the very first time.
Right.
Sitting next to the guy who wrote it and recorded it, and it was
Unbelievable.
like, yeah, when I first joined Ronnie, it was like I thought that I had been around the music industry long enough to have experienced everything, but no, he was a whole new layer of experience, um, integrity, musical integrity, and humanity.
Hmm. Yeah.
Again, he was one of those educated musicians.
Right. That's wonderful. I saw a picture floating around online of you, Brad Gillis, Tommy Aldridge, and another
Mhm.
fellow I didn't
Rick
recognize.
Hughes, yeah, Rick
Ricky.
Hughes,
Okay.
yeah.
And I think it was put out by Brad and said,
Mhm.
exciting new project coming soon. Is there anything you can tell me about that?
Yeah, I can tell you what's been revealed. It's just one track. We played on
Hmm.
one track. It's not really a project.
Okay.
Uh, it's not an ongoing thing,
Hmm.
uh, because we all have our, Brad's got Night Ranger. I got
Yeah.
Quiet Riot. Tommy's got, I guess he might be going with Whitesnake again. I don't know. To be honest with you, I know nothing about that camp.
Right.
But if Whitesnake goes out again, he'll be the drummer.
Sure.
Uh, and then Rick has got his own solo career. He's a vocalist. So we were asked by Rick to play on this track, and it's a cover. It had
Hmm.
nothing to do with Ozzy quite or any of the bands that we've been in before.
Gotcha.
Nothing. It's just a song that they said, "How would you like to play on this song?" They picked the song.
Is it out yet?
Oh no, not yet. Oh, and then we did a video, which is where the photo comes from.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
Well, I
yeah,
can't wait to hear it, man. I'm
yeah.
sure it's
Me
going to be
neither.
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah, me either.
I heard what I was tracking to when we did the video.
Mm,
We did a video, and of course, you get the playback through not
exactly.
the mastered version of the track, but kind of like a
Just a
kind of like
guide.
a
Yeah.
guide track, yeah,
Yeah.
so you can play along with it. And that's all I heard. Of course, it's through little monitors, and you're not getting the full fidelity of actually listening to it with with a really good set of headphones or a good
Right.
system.
And what do you got coming up with Quiet Riot in the near future?
Oh, lots of touring.
Yeah.
Very near future. Next week, we're playing somewhere near, I think it's, where's the town that Nirvana comes from
Or-
in Washington?
Oh, I don't know what exact.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's in the tip of my tongue. It's like south of Seattle.
Everett.
Everett. We're
Yeah.
playing there. There's a casino. We're
You know
playing
why I
there.
know about Everett is because
Uh,
that's where Lee Oscar from the band War lives.
really?
And I'm doing a blues documentary based around the harmonica. And I spent 3 or 4 days at his house with him
Wow.
in Everett.
It,
It's beautiful there, man. You're gonna.
they have an old ballroom in
Hmm.
Everett that I played there with Quiet Riot, with the with the four guys, with
Right.
Kevin and Frankie and Carlos, years ago. Right? Yeah, in early 2000, I always say 2007 or 8.
Hmm.
I play with them,
Oh, that's
and
cool.
first thing I heard was like, "Oh yeah, Nirvana used to play here all the time at this place."
Unbelievable, man.
Yeah.
So I have some different questions here. Just kind of like this or that
Okay, this is
type
that.
stuff. Just fun questions. Yeah.
Okay.
Vinyl or digital?
Oh. Wow. It's hard to answer that because for convenience, digital. For
Right.
a true representation of what the artist heard in the mixing room of the studio, analog.
Exactly. It's a two-edged sword for me, man.
Yeah.
During COVID, I went nostalgic and went and bought the turntables, like a old, like from '73, right? An old
Mm,
Sansui set.
mm,
And then I went nuts just buying all my favorite records, and then you forget what you already have, right? So I probably got 4 copies of Screaming for Vengeance, 6 copies of this or that. I finally at a
mm.
record convention about a month ago found Speak of the Devil in mint condition.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and it wasn't a re-release; it was the original. So I bought it, but I just, man, when I hear that needle drop and I'm just cleaning the house or just doing stuff around here, there's just nothing like that
Mm,
that thump of the bass in your speakers. And
mm.
but you're right, the digital is just so easy. There's no effort into it. You don't have to flip an album, put a needle down, anything like that. Studio recording or live performances?
That's another one. Uh, of every single studio recording I've ever done, it's like this. Even if you do pre-production, you show up and you start recording, and of course the producer will be with you in pre-production before you get to the studio. You work on the arrangements, and then you start picking out guitars and amplifiers for certain songs. But then everything kind of changes once you enter the studio because
Hmm.
now you're in a sonic environment that was not represented at the when you were doing at the rehearsal room for pre-production. Now you're bound for the sonic qualities, and I I've had experiences where the producer, who was also previously an engineer, had to go around the room adding reflectors
Hmm.
and diffusers to the room to be able to capture what he needed because we were all playing in the same room
Right.
at the same time, just to give the drums a live feel. And I thought, okay, I'm done. Then say, oh no, we use all the outboard gear on the drums. We're going to record you tomorrow.
Oh my
I
gosh.
go, God, no,
I
should
mean,
be
what to you? What's more important, a great producer or a great engineer?
a great engineer producer, a
Okay.
producer that understands. And it's usually by the time that I started recording, that's what we had.
Hmm.
Traditionally, like in the 60s, there was the engineer and the producer. They were like, maybe the producer was more of the guy who came up arranging and conducting, like
Right.
let's say George Martin. He
Hmm.
was not allowed as a producer to touch the board. Only the EMI lab coat engineers were allowed to
Right.
touch those 4 knobs that they
That's
on those
funny,
knobs.
man.
And
Uh,
then the Beatles got so big that they say, "Screw you, we're taking over the knobs
yeah.
ourselves."
Right.
Yeah,
What a group, man.
yeah,
Finger picking or using a pick?
whatever it takes,
Yeah.
whatever it takes. Sometimes the head of the screw is a Phillips or a straight head. You
Yeah.
know, so it's like
So
whatever.
whatever the song calls for, basically.
Yeah, but I will have to say, as a performer, I cannot move around like I move around with my fingers because my fingers, when I play without a pick live, my fingers are since I move around, they are also part of my muting system. Even
Yeah.
if I hold the bass up in my head, I'm muting all these strings that are not ringing. Let's say I'm playing the A string,
Mm,
so I'm muting every other string, the E, the D, and the G. So I could not do that with a pick because then you have like 2 fingers already holding the pick, and then you only got 3 fingers left to do something else, you
right.
know. So as a performer, I would say always with my fingers.
Okay. Classic rock or heavy metal?
See, to me, they're both the same because I think of heavy metal, anything from Jimi Hendrix. to Led Zeppelin, to The Who, uh, to even Ozzy, Black Sabbath, of course. That should have been first.
Right.
uh, Even though Hendrix, I gotta give Hendrix a lot of credit for plugging in his guitar into a Marshall stack and basically bringing what he grew up with, which is a horn section from a R&B band. If you listen to the song Fire, ba-da, ba-da,
Hmm.
da-da, da-da-da-da, all that, think of it as a horn section,
Right.
you know, playing that, but it's just one guy with the Marshall lamp.
Yeah. That's funny. We talk about Lee Oscar because he plays a harmonica like a horn.
Yes,
When you listen to Low
amazing,
Rider and all those other songs, yeah, it's just crazy.
amazing.
70s rock or 80s metal?
Oh, 70s rock.
Yeah.
See, I grew up with 70s rock. I
Hmm.
did not grow up with 80s metal. So that's the
I think
music
I
that
did
really,
too. My first real introduction into music was Alice Cooper's Love It to Death album.
mm,
It was 18 that I heard on the radio. Then I got the
yeah.
record and I just was like, what is the guy's got a snake wrapped around, like, oh my gosh. And speaking of bass players, what was his
Oh,
bass?
yeah. Dennis
Glenn
Dunaway. Great
Dennis
bass player.
Dunaway. Oh my, Muscle of
Yeah,
Love, that
I
that
know.
run he does in there. It's crazy.
And he was very animated live too. I mean, he
Oh
play.
yeah.
I saw them a few times. I saw them during the $1 Billion Babies tour,
Oh my
and
gosh.
he was running all over the place and playing just whatever you heard in the record. That's what he played.
Oh my God. Headbanging or grooving?
To me, they're both the same.
Yeah.
You can't groove unless you headbang.
Yeah. Pretty much. Riffs, guitar riffs, or melody?
Ooh. Melodies, I think of more melodies as vocal,
Hmm.
and the riffs are just the melodic uh, guitar melodies. Those to me, that's what a
Okay.
riff is. You know,
Okay. Road life or home life?
home life.
Dude, I feel you. The last tour I did
Yeah.
was with a band called Five Finger Death Punch, and you can
Oh
just
yeah,
imagine what that was like.
yeah,
I That was my final tour. And now if I hear a bus engine or
yeah,
the trucks, it's almost like PTSD. Like it was
yeah,
such bad memories of that run. I toured for, you know, 25 years or so until I just couldn't do it
yeah,
anymore. And that's when I came up with the idea for Hired Gun. I knew my time was
yeah,
up, and
yeah,
thank goodness it was what it was. We're gonna
yeah.
go. Yeah, go
I,
ahead.
I, I have the privilege that the way Quiet Riot tours nowadays is, and we've been doing this even when I joined the band back in 1997 when we had the reunion of all the four mental health guys. Uh, that we fly everywhere.
Mm,
I
okay.
mean, we might let's say we're playing. Let's say we're flying to Dallas, and then we'll do Houston, Dallas, and Austin, and then
Yeah.
we fly back out of Dallas again, like that. Not every time, but if we're gonna drive, we
Yep.
drive ourselves, and then you go the ins and outs, and
Hmm,
then I'm home. We do that during the weekend, and then during the week, like I am here today, I'm home. You
that's awesome. What does it
Yeah.
feel like that band still has this longevity? Wild.
Well, it's if you're going to look at it historically, it was the first band that had an impact for what became known as the '80s MTV rock generation.
Right.
Um, we had a #1 record. I mean, there's nothing nothing else indicates having an impact like selling enough to become #1 when your competition is Thriller, Synchronicity, and a lot of great records.
Right.
80, that came out in 1983. So historically, no matter what you can say about the band, we did that. We achieved that,
Mm,
and I believe that it really opened the door, or at least it put a focus on the Sunset Strip. because it just happens with every generation that one band comes out and it has a huge impact. You start
Hmm.
looking in the backyard. Well, who else is in this area that is making music, and they get signed by the labels? So they all want a piece of that. And so we were the ones who achieved that. Uh, and it's documented, by
Hmm.
our record sales and the impact that we had, and the many times that we got "Come and Feel the Noise" on MTV every half hour,
All the time. I
all the
remember
time.
it
Yeah,
was, and I couldn't wait to watch it.
yeah, yeah.
Matter
And
of
it
fact,
got
doing my research for the day, I went back and watched, and that was one of the videos I watched on YouTube. The kid in his
yeah,
bed with the knob and the ceiling
yeah,
coming in. It was so awesome.
yeah, yeah. And what was I found this interesting that the band doesn't come in until like almost like right before the guitar solo, like
Yeah, like
you
late,
know,
but it still
like
keeps your
late.
attention. Yeah,
Yeah, it does. I think now, now looking at it, say, okay, that was a really good vision of how
hmm,
how to create some tension before you reveal the band. Because
exactly.
after that, it's just us playing live uh in front of our fan club. We had a
Right.
fan club back
Oh
then.
shit. Do you
Yeah,
remember where
well,
that performance was at?
yeah, it was at a rehearsal, kind of like a small production studio that the video company, the
Hmm.
production company hired, and they set it up. It was in the same room was uh, where we were playing at. They had on the side, they actually had that recreation of the bedroom,
Oh,
and they had
okay.
them on hydraulics.
So like a sound stage
Yeah,
almost. Yeah.
exactly. But it's
Oh,
most
that's awesome.
not one of the big ones, but one
Yeah,
of the, more affordable ones.
sure.
And they had that reproduction of that bedroom where the kid was, kind of like an earthquake,
Bouncing around. Yeah.
the speakers pulsating and all that. Yeah, we watched that because we were waiting to go on and do our bit, for the video.
That's
Yeah,
wild. That's
yeah.
wild. What do you feel about the paid meet and greets to meet the fans? I know it's almost like a necessity now for touring artists because record sale declining and all this other stuff.
Well, what happens is if you don't have it as a meet and greet or paid meet and greet, because we do both.
Hmm.
We do the VIP meet and greet, which is a whole different thing. We bring people backstage either before or after the show, um, and then that's a whole different experience. It's more intimate.
Right.
But as far as us going to the merch table, anybody can stand there and they come through. They might buy a photo,
Hmm.
they might buy something else. We've been having with us like drum heads autographed
Oh,
by the
cool.
whole band.
Right.
Certain items, and but it's but we do not make it you know that only if you buy something you can
Right.
come through the table.
Yeah. I mentioned Jason Newsted earlier, and he was doing him too, and he hated it. But he would walk into the room and all the fan. I mean, he got throngs of fan because Metallica
Mhm.
was just
Yeah, of course.
a
Yeah,
behemoth. But he would start off, like, look, if you ever see me in the streets or in a restaurant, please approach me.
yeah,
I do this
of
for
course.
you guys. And the
Yeah.
only reason that we do these paid meet and greets is because it guarantees you the chance to shake my hand and get something signed in a picture or whatnot. I thought that was pretty clever on his behalf to do something like that.
Yeah.
Um, let's move into entertainment and movies. Uh, action movies or horror movies?
Action.
Oh, okay. Any particular
Action.
favorites you like?
Action movies? No. I
No.
mean, as long as they have action, and they have some kind of a plot.
Hmm.
I was very surprised how good the last Mission Impossible, which is the first part, there's the second part being released.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, it was really, really, really good. Very entertaining.
Yeah.
It has a timely subject to it, subject matter,
Hmm.
AI, and also as far as horror, we just watched Nosferatu.
Oh, what'd you think of that? I saw that in the theaters.
I thought it was a comedy.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
especially at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And since we're having this conversation and you watched it, and I
Yeah.
apologize for if anybody hasn't seen the movie, and I happen to speak about the ending of the movie. It did not make any sense. Here you have
Right.
this vampire, and he's so horny that he forgets to shut the curtains. You're a
Exactly.
vampire. You
Right.
survived all these centuries
Yeah.
of not to stand in the sun,
Yeah.
but you're so horny that you get in the room, you start like doing whatever you're doing, and all of a sudden, you the sun comes in through the window.
Dude, if that would have been me, I would have melted 100 years ago. Right. Oh my God. Okay. Speaking of Mission Impossible or James Bond,
Or
as
James
far
Bond.
as a franchise.
James
Yeah.
Bond. James
Okay.
Bond. I grew up with James Bond.
Yeah.
That's it's
Right.
to me James Bond and the Beatles were just
Side by
culture
side.
icons.
Right.
Cultural icons. Yeah.
Star Wars or Star Trek?
I only give it to Star Trek because it was produced by a Cuban, Desi
Oh,
Arnaz.
I
Yeah,
did
well,
not
yeah, it
know
was
that.
the Desi Lu Productions. Yeah,
Wow.
that's
1980s
that's.
movies? Yeah. 80s movies or 90s
Oh,
movies?
oh, that's a really good question. I think '80s movies got really sappy, and I
Mhm.
can't stand, even though I'm guilty of it, people, especially guys, wearing shoulder pads.
Oh God. Yeah.
That's '80s.
Yeah.
Okay. And I have a lot of shoulder pads in my closet
Yeah.
of stuff that I don't wear anymore.
Right.
I, so I'm guilty of that. But you could not get dressed. You could not go buy anything to wear unless you had shoulder pads,
For sure.
in the '80s. '90s, I think '90s, and I think it had a lot to do with the same effect that AIDS had on music videos
Hmm.
that, and I am aware of this because we were affected by it in Whitesnake. MTV made the decision because they're as PSA, they used to do AIDS awareness videos for the youth to
Right.
abstain from sex. And they realized that if you do that and then you follow it with a video vixen, that defeats the purpose of
Right.
the
Right.
PSA, right? And that's when they started leaning more towards grunge bands that had no video vixens, but the video vixens then were allowed in the rap videos,
Mm. Hmm.
you know, so that kids going like, well, where are the hot looking women in the videos? Oh, in rap videos. I'm gonna start watching those.
Exactly. And they
you know,
were twerking and
oh
half,
yeah,
yeah, oiled
yeah.
up. It's crazy.
It was,
You got a ton
it
of
was nuts.
cocaine rolling around on a
Well, that
Jaguar.
was
Yeah,
yeah, but
exactly.
by the time that we in 1990 when we did actually in 1989 for a 1990 tour, we did the uh, videos for Now You're Gone and from the album Slip of the Tongue.
Right.
MTV asked no Tawny. As a matter of fact, on Fool for Your Loving, you only see her silhouette.
Hmm.
No Tawny, no video vixen. And then they the deeper the love has Tawny back in there again, and
Right.
whatever. But yeah, it was a thing. So what I'm getting at, I think that the writing got better in the '90s. The scripts because they were less sexual exploitation based, and we
Right.
saw a lot of that in the '80s.
Yeah. Uh, Comedies or dramas?
Dramedy.
Oh, okay. I got you. I got you. So kind
It-
of
you
like
know,
like Cohen Brothers or something, because they got that dark comedy drama type thing.
Yeah, when was the last time I saw a really good comedy? I can't even recall.
I'll tell you the last time I saw one was the other night, just sitting at home watching The Great Outdoors. with John Candy, and remember
That's an
that one?
old one.
Oh
Yeah,
my
it's an
God,
old one.
it was
Yeah,
so
that's an
good.
old one. Yeah.
So, are you into watching movies at home or going to the theater and having that experience?
Watching movies at home. The last time we went to a theater, my wife and I, was for Beetlejuice 2.
Yeah.
And we're scheduled to go to watch the Led Zeppelin movie Wednesday, tomorrow
Yep.
in the afternoon at a theater nearby.
I saw that. You're gonna love it.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I happened to be around during that time. And
Oh yeah, but the movie itself, the sound mix,
yeah,
because I'm big
yeah.
on sound in a
Yeah,
movie.
but it's
Oof.
a visual
Yeah.
representation of what it was like in an era that I started playing.
Yeah.
So it's going to bring all that back to me. Yeah.
Right.
Have you watched 64?
64?
Yeah. So
Uh,
it sounds like you haven't. Okay. The
no.
Maisley brothers
Hmm.
uh, were allowed access to the Beatles during the week that they were in New York to appear on the Ed Sullivan Show, and they followed them everywhere.
Oh my God.
And Peter Jackson's team was able to take the audio and the video,
Hmm.
not only remastering the video, but did do the same thing as they did with Get Back, which to create stems of
Yep.
all their dialogue and their playing. It's for me, I preferred it even better than Get Back.
Really? And it's called
Oh yeah,
64. Where can I find
60.
this?
It's Apple.
Apple? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
It's on the biopics or documentaries.
Ooh. Oh, by ooh. I would say documentaries because you.
Yeah.
The,
Oh, come on, man. I would say documentaries too, because that's the real representation, unless the
yeah,
director is kind of like skewing it one way or another.
yeah.
Whereas a
And
biopic, they'll throw stuff in there.
well, it's Hollywood.
Yeah,
It's based on
exactly.
and and what I really appreciate, and I will have to say that the hired gun had such a broad uh, representation
Hmm.
of the history of the music that we grew up with,
Right,
coming from the lips of those who created it.
right,
Uh, there's no better documentation of that person's truth than that, because writing, you could write something, it could get edited.
right.
Once is, I mean, of course, maybe in the future with AI, you can create fake representations of somebody talking and what they're saying. But as far as it goes right now, because you were able to release your documentary before AI had an impact, there will always be that copy
Yep. Yeah,
of the true representation
man.
of what those
Yeah,
artists were
yeah,
sharing.
yeah. I love making that movie and just learning from every one of these people I interviewed.
Oh yeah,
And there's
yeah.
stuff that's never been seen by the public before.
Mhm,
From people that didn't even make the movie.
mhm,
Some of them called me or like, why am I not in your movie? But as a director, you interview all these people in hopes of getting a couple of good stories, and you can't hit a home run when you're interviewing, 75 people or whatnot. And
yeah.
now what I do, what you're talking about, with new media and stuff, is before I go spend $10,000-$20,000 on a production interviewing somebody, because that's what it costs. By the time you add everything in, I do Zoom interviews prior, just to see if they have a personality, what their story is like. Because story's number one, personality number two, and are they charismatic, and how do they come across on camera? You know,
Mhm,
and and that's how I kind of have been moving forward. Because those things are all important. And not to
mhm,
say that those other people didn't have great stories, but I mean the standouts are in Hired Gun.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah.
Indie films or big budget productions?
Script. I
Yeah,
don't
it's all
care.
about the script, right?
It's all about the script, the story. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. Story is everything, man. When anybody
Yeah.
asks me, like, "What's your next thing?" I was like, "Well, I got to find the great story." You
Yeah.
know, it has to be great. Freddy Krueger or Michael Myers?
I, like I mentioned, I'm not a big fan of horror. I would have to say Freddy Krueger only because I happen to be in a scene from what do you call that the one that Dawkins had the
Oh
soundtrack.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
What
Jesus.
was that? Dream Warrior.
Dream Warriors. Yep.
Dream Warrior. Okay, there's a scene where there's a security guard and he's watching TV, and it's Wally George. You know who Wally George? It was kind of like a TV a guy that would do like controversial television interviews. He would bring in people
Right.
and then kind of like a Jerry Springer type of,
Gotcha.
but it was on local channel, local access
Hmm.
in LA. And so it's Ted Nugent, Eric Singer, myself, and somebody that is in there that cannot even. I see the photos and it's like, who's that guy? And I
Really?
know he's somebody, but I
Yeah.
just don't know who it is. And we were part. So we got filmed with Wally George doing this, and it was, of course, it was scripted, and there was like
Right.
this big commotion, and he was famous for like having security guards at his show grab the guests and throw them out.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So I'm in the movie.
That's
The,
I'm gonna have to go watch it now.
yeah, yeah. It's a the camera is panning
Yep.
to it, and it doesn't stop. It just keeps going.
Yeah. So
But
you're in the
but
one swipe there, huh?
that's right. And I
How
still get, for some reason, from Scandinavia, I get like 5 cent checks from uh, from SAG.
hey man, take what you can get right now, right?
That's right. They're adding up.
Uh, Al Pacino or Robert De Niro?
Oh, Pacino.
Yeah. Dog Day Afternoon is one of my
Tony
favorite
Montana.
movies.
Come
Yeah,
on, Tony
yeah,
Montana.
yeah.
Tony Montana is like it's like an uncle that I had.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, everybody's uncle, Cuban uncle.
Exactly.
There's always a Tony Montana in your family, at least
Yep.
one.
Well, that would be my mother. She's out of her mind. Yeah.
Do
Yeah. She has no
you
filter
know
or like,
that you cannot find a copy of Scarface in any Cuban home
is that
because
right?
it hit home. It was
Uh,
so realistic that it was like, nope, we don't want to know about that because we lived it.
right, right, right. Too spot on.
It was spot on.
Stallone or Schwarzenegger?
I always say Stallone.
Yeah.
Stallone because before Rocky, there had never been a Rocky. Of course, you got the Terminator, but it's a
Right.
whole different thing. It's Rocky. That whole story again, the story
Yep.
that it was actually
And First Blood. Let's not forget about that.
with Rambo,
Yeah.
right?
Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah,
God.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's but there's something about Rocky. About in life you go through the challenge and you have to rise up again to be even
Hmm.
be bigger than you were before. I think it's the challenges that
Yeah.
really make you succeed.
Right. The Godfather or Goodfellas?
Oh, Godfather,
Yeah, for sure.
especially Godfather 2. The whole
Mm.
scene about in Havana,
Yeah.
I was there. I was 9 years
Really?
old when, going 59 into 58, and I gotta tell you, I still remember it happening exactly as it did.
Wow.
So complete reenactment. Yeah,
Well, how about this one? Goodfellas or Casino?
I like Casino.
Me too, man.
I like Casino
When
a
that
lot.
movie came out, it was 3 hours long. I probably watched it 4 times in the
Yeah,
theater. I
yeah.
love
When
that
it's
movie.
on, yeah, my wife watches it all the time, and
Yeah.
Joe Pesci going crazy with
Oh,
a pen on the guy,
yes.
just like.
Yeah. Don't you ever
Do
talk? Yeah. Oh my God. Uh,
I look like a clown?
yeah, exactly. Quentin Tarantino or Martin
Um,
Scorsese?
That's really good. I must say that I've watched more Tarantino movies.
Yeah.
Not that I don't like Scorsese, but I love Tarantino.
Yeah.
story. Because
Right.
see, with Scorsese, it's there's an arc to it, you know,
Mhm.
to telling the story. This is my perception. With with Tarantino, you don't know what to expect because, like in Pulp Fiction,
Oh,
really doesn't. I mean, the arc of it is the beginning and the ending. In
yeah.
between, this is like snippets,
Exactly.
and you don't know if it's going back or if it's going forwards. It just plays with you. You have to pay attention.
Mhm.
That's the thing about watching movies. You have to really be in the theater. You're paying attention to what you're watching. At home, there's too many distractions.
Too
The
many.
phone rings. You know,
It's hard
somebody
for me to,
said,
yeah, it's actually
you know,
it's hard for me to watch movies at home because I get too distracted, and I
yeah,
love the theater experience. I like to
yeah,
sit. The only thing I hate is when they make you pick out your seat. I want to sit where I want to sit, get my popcorn, my peanut M&Ms, and just be left alone and escape for 2 hours, right?
yeah. I hear it.
It's just great. Live concerts or live sporting events?
Oh, concerts.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
doubt.
yeah.
Road trips or staycations?
Staycation.
Mhm.
My vacation is going on the road playing. That's
Right.
my road trip. I do that for a living. Yeah.
Yeah. Being a prankster or being pranked?
I don't like being pranked. I don't like being a prankster. So how about watching?
Okay.
An observer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's funny. Uh, okay. If you did go on vacation, like your own, like a real, would you rather do a beach vacation or something in the mountains where it's just
Oh
quiet?
no, beach,
Yeah.
beach. Yeah, I'm
Same.
from an island.
Yeah.
That kind of like brings me,
Right.
brings me back to my original environment. Yeah.
Right. Denim or leather?
How about fleece?
Yep.
The older I get, the softer,
Right.
the fabric. I,
Exactly.
I I would say denim because leather makes an absolute statement, and you cannot wear leather at all times of the day
Right.
because then you become then it's like, are you wearing that because you haven't been home since last night?
Exactly.
This is what you were the night before. Whereas leather, you can wear that anytime. It's classic,
True.
really is. Plus, no animals get
Hurts. Yeah.
hurt unless it's something that the carcass is discarded because the animal has been consumed, and of
Right.
course,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I have a soft spot for animals too. It's hard to
yeah,
think about all that stuff.
yeah,
Are you a day person or a night owl?
day person.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I
Hmm.
get up before it dawns. And now it's even because of the time change, the
Yeah,
hours.
yeah.
I'm still dealing with that because I usually get up at 6, but
Okay.
now I'm thinking I'm actually getting up at 5.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know. I feel like I have jet lag from going to Europe or something. Like, what is going on here? Why's the sun up? Uh, superhero powers or being a rock star?
Hmm. I'm a musician. I don't consider myself a rock star, but it would mean that can Superman play the bass? He
Right?
would probably destroy it, pulverize it,
Yeah.
start pulling the strings and go boing. So
Exactly.
I want to play. I don't want to
Okay.
destroy my instrument. So I would definitely go with Rockstar.
Okay. Huge arenas or intimate club shows?
Oh, are you kidding?
What do you prefer playing?
Okay. And let's be honest, this is my perception. For
Yeah.
somebody who survived playing clubs for 10 years before I went on tour with Ozzy, started playing arenas and stadiums. When you reach that level and you start playing clubs, it's because you were not able to sell an arena in that town on that day. So when you add the word intimate, it's to kind of like soften the blow. Really?
I got you.
you know, but then again, I love playing casinos. Great
Okay.
everything. Backline, sound system, lights, light, the environment of the audience,
Hmm.
good. You're gonna play for like, not necessarily an arena. I mean, we've done some arenas last year, uh, but it's I think it's good. I mean, and we do packages where we do headlines on our own, playing in the we just did Windover. We sold it out.
Mm,
The Pepper Mill, the theater they have, and yeah, I mean, it's something that you say, okay, we're we still we're still in the part of the consciousness of our generation. They
right.
still want to come and celebrate the legacy of the band and the legacy of the generation itself. So we're still valid. So when you play like in front of like 3,000 people in a casino environment, the arenas is something else because then you start getting into packages,
Right.
and then you perform a little bit less because there's 4 or 5 bands on the bill, and so I rather headline at a casino for 2,000, 3,000 people.
Right. Which brings me to this question. So off air, we were talking about the resurgence of some of these early
Mhm,
2000 bands,
mhm,
Creed, Three Doors Down,
mhm,
Nickelback,
mhm,
and I had a chance to go see all three of those bands. I saw
mhm,
Nickelback at the Kia Forum,
mhm,
sold out to the rafters,
mhm,
crazy. Creed, and I remember touring with them with Stained, were not filling the arenas, even with
mhm,
Stained, which is a huge
mhm,
radio band. Now you can't wish for a ticket to go see that. 20,
mhm.
25,000 people. Same thing with Three Doors Down. What do you think that's from? Is it the quality of music that's coming out today and these kids are going back, reverting to listening some of these really good classic radio hit songs or
No, I think it's a cycle, an industry and a life cycle. Uh, Let me give you, for example, the 80s,
Mhm.
right? Because my reference is gonna be something that I experienced, right?
Sure.
And my observation is based on watching this happen. Let's say in the 80s, let's say we did the Oz Festival, and I mentioned that because it's documented. You can watch the video on
Right.
YouTube. It's mostly kids in the audience,
Mhm.
maybe teenagers, you know, maybe teenagers that they met, boy and girl met at the show, which was very common. I've met a lot of couples that say, "Oh yeah, we met at one of your shows, and we've been married for so long." So what happens is in the 80s generation, that was going on. It was a hookup event.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, first of all, you have this band in common with the two of you. You're there to because you like the band. So now,
Right.
now you definitely got that in common. And maybe she needs a ride, or you need a ride, and she's going to give you a ride, and you get that social networking that used to be the concerts, because people were not with the iPhones; they were paying attention to their surroundings and the band. Nowadays, it's like they're watching the show through the iPhone.
Oh my god.
You know what I mean. So there's
Yeah,
there's a
yeah, yeah.
bit of a disconnect with your
Yeah.
environment.
I wanted
Uh,
to go I wanted to go see that band Ghost. They did 2 nights
uh-huh.
at the Kia Forum and they filmed it for a DVD or a movie or something.
Oh,
And no cameras allowed. They made you put your camera in this pouch and it had a magnetic lock that you could not open. It was so refreshing and cool to
uh,
watch a show like that.
I bet. Yeah.
Now, in my early career as a photographer, and
Mhm.
as you probably know, if you looked at the ticket stubs back then of your own, no cameras allowed, period.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
will be confiscated, film ripped
Yeah.
out. So for me to do what I needed to do, because I was a nobody, I had no photo credentials or I was not
Yeah.
shooting for, I would sneak my
Yeah.
camera into
Yeah.
concerts in my leather jacket. So I'd take the lens, whoosh, body,
Yeah.
whatnot. Then I'd assemble it in my seat and try to edge my way closer to the stage to try to get some shots. And I
Yeah.
never got caught.
Mm.
And that's how I sold my very first picture. It was a
Wow.
Alice Cooper to Metal Edge magazine to the old Jerry Miller. I'm sure you've met
Jerry
her.
Miller. Oh
Yeah, I
God,
loved
yeah.
her, and she was,
I love her too. Yeah,
yeah, and she gave me my push, man. If it wasn't for her, and then some other people down the road, I don't just
yeah,
give her all the credit, but
yeah,
man, she
yeah,
fed me so much work. And I was in Atlanta,
yeah,
which was great. So there wasn't a lot of competition to get photo shoots rather than just live photography. And one of your current band members, Johnny Kelly, she loved Typo Negative.
yeah,
So she would send me on assignment, and I probably did 10, 12 photo shoots with Typo Negative because of her.
yeah,
And you
yeah,
mentioned Dana Strump. She loved Slaughter.
yeah,
I can't tell you how many times I've shot Slaughter.
yeah.
You know, it's funny how
So
that works. Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
just,
So just
yeah,
yes, so
go
just to
ahead.
encapsulate the topic that we were talking about. So the kids who meet at the concerts start going out. They get married.
Hmm.
Now we're going entering the late 80s. Now they got married. They got kids. Okay, now you're going to lose half your audience because the mom is going to stay at home
Uh,
taking care of the kids, right? So now she's a housewife. She's at home taking care of the kids. Maybe it's boys' night out, as in that movie about Rush. Where was it? I Love You Man. It's
yeah,
called
yeah,
Love
yeah.
You Man. Where the guys get together to go and watch Rush.
Right.
And so that generation, then again, now you're entering the 90s, which is a new generation of kids getting together at concerts,
Hmm.
thanks to MTV, who says, okay, these are the bands that you should be watching
Right.
because basically we say so. And we say so because there's no sexual innuendos or video vixens in the videos.
Sure.
It's grunge, and you're gonna like this. So, okay, cool. A brand new. Plus, you know, every decade you should flush the toilet
Hmm.
and start all over again. You know what I mean? So, which is what happened. The big flush of 1990. You know, a lot of the 80s stuff got flushed down and made room for the 90s bands.
Yep.
But most important is that we started losing our audience. And I got to tell you, because I saw it. Because we did a tour in 1990 where everybody went out at the same time. And some bands, believe it or not, Judas Priest, they really suffered from it.
Mm.
They were getting like maybe 100 to 1,000 people showing up in arenas. We did a show with Whitesnake that we were scheduled in Toronto to headline by ourselves. The promoter says, no, it's things are lagging tickets. We're gonna put you together with Kiss.
Hmm.
So they moved it to kind of like to a to like a small stadium
Yeah.
outside of right there in Toronto, and we performed with Kiss. They were started like thinking outside the box. How are we gonna save this summer?
Hmm.
Because ticket sales, it's kind of like people had been touring for so long, so hard that there was a glut.
Yeah.
And then you got the AIDS epidemic. Kids were not, you know,
Mm-mm.
going to these shows to hook up anymore because they wanted to abstain and not
Get
get
AIDS.
AIDS.
Yeah.
You know, so and then that generation toward the 90s, like I mentioned already, the couples that saw the bands in 1983, 84, they were married, they had kids, wife stays at home. You lose half of your audience right there. So then you start a brand new cycle. Okay, now you got the 90s consciousness of the audience. And the 90s consciousness of the audience worked perfectly. And I don't know if it coincided with the fact that Kurt Cobain pulled the trigger,
Mm.
and that was pretty much the end of that era.
Yep.
There has not been since the 2000s, there has really not been a defining musical movement like we had the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and then
Done.
nothing,
Yep. I agree.
nothing, nothing, nothing definable that you say, okay, you got grunge or you got punk or you got new wave or you got 80s hair metal or 70s classic rock or British invasion. 2000, there's no definition to it.
No.
Maybe you can call it the Napster generation because it had a lot to do with that. Napster coming
Mhm.
in and record companies saying we're out because we're not selling records. You're not selling records. You're not getting your music played on the radio, which means that people don't hear the reason why you should be coming to the show because there's no new music being played.
Yeah. I remember when Rob Halford left Judas Priest and formed Fight.
Yes,
I
with John
saw,
Five. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, John, yeah.
Oh,
No,
no,
he
no,
was in three, in
and
two,
two.
two,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
two.
This
That
was
was John
with
Five. Yeah.
the guy that's in Steel Panther now, and then another. It was a great band, Scott Travis
Hmm.
on drums.
Hmm.
But I saw them in this teeny club in Atlanta called the Roxy
Hmm.
Theater.
Oh yeah.
It was half full, but
Hmm.
right down the road at the Omni, Nirvana had sold out 2 nights.
Yeah.
Same night. I'm just kind of like, what is
Yeah.
going on here? This is
Yeah.
Rob Halford, the metal god.
Yeah.
There's
It's a
500.
cycle.
Yeah.
It's a
So,
cycle. So every band, every generation, and we've been. Look, I have I have about 60 dates this year already booked,
wow.
and I got to tell you, this is 40. Okay, 40 is going to be 43 years, no, 42 years of Mental Health release.
Oh.
Now, if you go back from 83, let's say you go back to 1945, just to give you a round up number.
Mhm.
How many bands from 1945 artists were actually touring in 1983?
Mm.
I mean, how many? And I'm talking about our generation. You still have bands like Def Leppard. They're doing stadiums, and Motley
Right.
Crue is doing residencies, and it keeps going on.
Mhm.
So we're so blessed to be able to still be able to do this
Right.
decades later.
Mhm.
Decades later, and all we have to do is show up and give people their money's worth and then some. Keep them coming back for more. Be better than they ever expected you to be. Which
I gotta tell you,
which
man.
is
Yeah.
which is the reason why we became all of us became successful
Right.
because we were better than they ever thought we were going to be before they came in to watch the band the first time in that arena opening up for, let's say, Quiet Riot opening up for Loverboy.
Mhm.
Nobody knew. So we did. We showed up and we did what we did. And people go, oh, can we, next time you guys come back as headliners, I'm going to go and see them. That's
Right.
how you become successful and that's how you sustain a career.
Yep. It's funny, one thing we didn't touch upon was I got to see you play with the Guess Who.
Hmm.
Incredible show. Like I couldn't believe I've never seen the Guess Who before. Obviously they were huge back in the 70s, early
Hmm.
80s or
Hmm.
whatnot, but
Hmm.
the representation that you guys did that evening, and who was Ray, it was a great crowd we had with it. It was
Yeah.
Ray Parker
Yeah.
was with me,
I
Derek
remember.
Green, yeah, Derek Green from Sepultura,
Yeah.
a couple other people, and you guys just blew the roof off that place, man.
Yeah, I grew up with the Guess Who. I used
Mm.
to play those songs in high school bands,
Right.
and because people ask me how did I, going from Ozzy and Whitesnake to the Guess Who.
Right.
This I played that music before I played anything else.
Right.
They were part of the '60s British invasion, even though they were Canadian. So I was schooled in that. That's how I learned how to play. You
Great.
know, and
So
and
good.
I got to tell you, I never got the sense. I always got the sense that because of obviously there was one original member. It
Hmm.
was a reimagining of the Guess Who, but also a lot of respect
Yes.
for the legacy of the band. And if you hated us because we actually did not suck, you
Right.
know what I mean? Because we all respected the legacy of the band and we wanted to be the best performance that we could out of respect for growing up with this music and that I'm actually playing with the original drummer and the band's called the Guess Who. And you also have to respect yourself,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
all of that. And that was that was the reason why we did it, and that's how I go on stage. And no, of course, I have bigger responsibilities with Quiet Riot because it's my home.
Right.
I first joined, I can sit down and basically write a book as to why since 1978.
Right.
Uh, but I always take that musical integrity with me wherever I go because I love music so much and I respect every band that I step in and take somebody's place in. I I respect whoever was there before me. And if you think that I'm doing a good job, it's because I'm being grateful for what these musicians did before I joined the band.
Right. It shows, man. Anytime I've ever seen you perform, it's been top notch. Let's do a heavy metal face off. Black Sabbath or Metallica?
Oh, Black Sabbath.
Black Sabbath with Ozzy or with Dio?
Oh, that's
Put
not
you on
fair
the.
because I play with both.
I
So
know.
it's like I play Black Sabbath music with both. I mean, it's two different Black Sabbath,
Right.
you know, and they're both to me as important. And as I mean, you had even Geezer, he played a little bit different with Dio than
Yeah,
he
you
did
did.
with Black Sabbath, and I love both versions of Geezer. Not to even mention the singers.
Mhm. Okay. Judas Priest or Iron Maiden?
Oh, Priest,
Same. Megadeth or Metallica?
Metallica,
Okay. Motorhead or Anthrax?
Motorhead.
Accept or Saxon?
That's a good one. I'll take Saxon because I actually tour with them.
Did you?
Yeah, I mean not in the band, but
Yeah, yeah,
Ozzy opened up for Saxon in England in 1981. Actually, it was in Germany, in Europe.
right.
Yeah, and we did not get to go outside of Germany because Ozzy had a nervous breakdown by the time we got to Dortmund.
Mm,
Actually, Munich. In Munich, that's where we stopped and we returned to London after a couple of days. Yeah.
okay, last ones here. Aerosmith or Cheap Trick?
Ooh, I love Cheap Trick. I love Aerosmith too,
Yeah,
but eh, yeah, I mean, Cheap Trick is the band that I would love to be in, except that I love Tom Peterson so much, and I love the original version of the band so much that it would not be the same. So,
right,
so it's one of the catch 22.
right. Kiss or Twisted Sister?
Ooh, I mean, you can't. I mean, Kiss is such an original. They
Right.
invented this thing. It was like,
Yeah,
I I love all the guys in Twisted, but you gotta hand it over to Kiss. This is
yeah.
like they were,
They were
they're
the
the original. Yeah,
inventors. The
yeah,
inventors. Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, AC/DC with Bon Scott or Brian Johnson?
Ooh, I'll take Bon Scott.
Same, man. He just had that prowess and that guttural Australian whatever he brought to the table, right?
Yeah, and he sang like he lived this life.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Very bluesy. It was just, I don't know. I agree with you though. AC/DC or Deep Purple?
Okay. Can I choose a version of Deep
Sure,
Purple?
of
I
course.
would say the Coverdale Glenn Hughes version of Deep Purple,
The burn.
the Burn version. Yeah,
Yeah.
and Stormbringer. Yeah,
Such heavy
yeah.
stuff. Heart or Pet Benatar?
Oh, Heart,
Same.
Heart. I mean, Heart. I would put Heart not just against another female artist, but against any band.
To me, Ann Wilson is the female Rob Halford.
And
She
Robert
is,
Plant. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, she
yeah,
is so
yeah.
damn good, man.
I know. But then they've always been that good.
Always.
always
I
from
mean,
record one.
yeah. I mean, look, I saw her on a clip the other day on YouTube or whatnot. She's in a wheelchair and she can still
Mhm,
sing. I mean, is it
mhm.
from 20 years ago? No, but still good enough to go on stage and perform in front of an audience,
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
yeah.
Blue Öyster Cult or Uriah Heep?
Oh, that's not fair. I used to play with the
The
Colt.
Blue Öyster Cult, yeah.
But which actually, I listened to more Uriah Heep growing up because I used to buy their records
Hmm.
than BOC. And then when I joined the band, they gave me like 40 songs to learn because you never knew what Eric Bloom was going to call out
Right.
on stage. And there were like four perennials that they will keep, Burning for You and Godzilla and The Reaper
Sure.
and so on. But the rest, Eric would write the set list 5 minutes before he hit the stage.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
he just felt it. It was like, okay, this is what we're gonna play.
This is what the crowd's going to want to hear tonight,
Yeah, and
I
it
think.
was kind of
Yeah.
like you never knew until you had that list, right?
Right.
And then if there was some young lady in the audience that would shout a song that's not on the list that you might have never even played with them, you better know it because
Oh, yeah.
Eric's gonna say, you know, whatever song that she was yelling out. Oh yeah,
You better have it together. Yeah.
yeah, they have together. Yeah.
Led Zeppelin or The Who?
Oh man, you're killing me with this one. I love them both equally. But see, I see Led Zeppelin more as a band
Hmm.
than the Who being really the brainchild musically, songwriting of Pete Townsend.
Sure.
I read his book, and I really got who I am. Uh, I really got a true sense of what the Who really is,
Hmm.
as a musical entity. Uh, yeah, and then Led Zeppelin to me was just like a musical beast that
Right.
existed until John Bonham left us.
Right. Queen or David Bowie?
Oh, wow! I have to go with Queen on
Okay.
that because Bowie is just Bowie. Well, of course,
Right.
you have Mick Ronson, and then or the Chameleon.
Yeah.
Man, Queen. What a band!
Dude. So
Yeah,
good. Pink Floyd or The Doors?
outdoors.
Okay. Fleetwood Mac or the Eagles?
Fleetwood Mac.
Journey or Boston?
Journey.
Same.
Yeah, because Boston was one person's vision, and
Yeah.
Journey had an evolution to the band.
Hmm. Sticks or REO Speedwagon?
Sticks.
Stick. I found my ticket stub in my book the other day. I was showing it to a friend of mine. I have my ticket stub, 1983, the Omni, the Roboto tour.
Oh yeah, baby.
Oh, it was so amazing.
Yeah, they
The
still are.
oh, dude,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. The Police or you too?
Oh, police.
Mm,
Police is yeah, yeah. This is something else.
right. Just mute the three guys, man. Just put it down.
Yeah, and I mean, the U2 has some great songs too, and yeah, it's more of a movement,
Hmm.
of a movement, spiritual movement, you know. And the police is just great music,
Yeah.
you know.
The Beach Boys or the Monkees?
Oh, come on.
I know the Beach Boys, obviously. All right, last one. Cream or the Yardbirds?
Oh, Cream.
Okay.
Cream. That's Jack Bruce. He
Yeah.
was such an inspiration. Still is, you know.
Yeah.
One finger, just like
Right.
James Emerson.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
once did an interview with him,
Oh,
in
really?
person at Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp. He was the special guest, and they asked me, being a bass player, to conduct the interview. So I asked him, so how does a classically trained cellist becomes one of the most influential electric bass players.
Right.
And he said, you cannot pick up chicks with a cello.
There you go. Well, Rudy, thank you, man, for all this time and for being so cool always.
Oh, you too, brother Fran.
Yeah, and we'll make sure to put links down where everybody can find you and tickets for your shows or whatnot. And where can we find your book?
Oh,
Off the
Amazon.
Rails.
Yeah,
Amazon?
it's just Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the place. Yeah.
And for the people that don't know, that book was so instrumental in me doing my research for interviewing
Mm.
Rudy and Hired Gun. I mean, that thing was just art.
Mm.
It really was.
It's the book I wish I had never had to write.
Yeah.
But I had to write it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a tough read, but
Yeah.
you know, it really helped me in my preparation to come talk to you. All right, man. Well, thanks again for coming on, and I am sure I will see you around soon.
Thank you, my brother. God bless
Love
you.
you, man.
Take care. Love you too.